From what I understand of your work, Sulak, you've been very active in trying to bring Buddhism forward and trying to really respond to what you see as the way Buddhism needs to come forward into the 21st century. Could you say, if you could sum that up, what you feel, if you look at the Buddhist tradition, you say, well, what this tradition needs to really meet the challenge of the 21st century, what would you say? How would you describe that?
Buddhism, as you know, had been founded over 2,500 years ago. And traditionally, it has been a wonderful religion, helping people to be mindful, to be aware of suffering, to transform greed into generosity, to transform hatred into compassion, to transform ignorance into wisdom.
Right.
But to be honest with you, traditionally it wouldn't work anymore.
Right.
Because the society has now become much more complex.
Right.
Urbanizations,
Right.
globalizations, and the idea of structural violence. Unless the Buddhists know how to tackle this, Buddhism will be only good for those who want to have personal happiness. And they don't realize that their personal well-being, they have seeds of peace within, but their lifestyle in fact contribute to the suffering in the world.
Wow. Right.
I think the Buddhists have to be aware of that.
Right.
And to be aware of that, perhaps I would call it a small b Buddhism, not capital B Buddhism. Less institutional, less yana, whether Mahayana, Vajrayana, Theravada, and so on. I think, and Buddhism could perhaps contribute, because Buddhism does not stress that we have the only truth. We are seeking of truth. In this sense, we could perhaps collaborate with our friends, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, in seeking truth. That is, we are willing to listen to those who suffer. And those who suffer, they suffer because of the structural violence. The rich, the powerful, pass the law, and so on, to make those poor and remain poor. And if the Buddhists are not aware, we will help them, giving them something, social welfare, so that they will ever remain poor.
Right.
I think the Buddhists, if the Buddhists understand essential teaching,
right.
Buddhism, it means to awake, Buddha, awake. If we awake ourselves, it means that we must challenge our lifestyle, challenge our way of thinking, and perhaps stop thinking in the presence. In the presence, not thinking. Because thinking contributes black and white, me and thou, you and I. I think this can go back to the teaching of the Buddha, how to interrelate it. Because of you, it's me.
Right.
Because of the trees that I survive, because of the poor,
Right.
that I can be what myself. And then in that, get out of the usual paradigm, get out of the usual habit, then perhaps Buddhism will contribute something.
Right.
Because Buddhism does not depend on faith.
Right.
So I think if
It's not
we...
an exclusionary tradition.
That's right.
which
We
is
can...
traditionally so much. Yes.
But of course, don't claim to be superior to those with faith.
Right.
Faith could be helpful, could be harmful.
Right.
So I think in that sense...
You often hear Buddhism say, well, these God-oriented religions, they're kind of not
No. I think if you take God-oriented religion, something positive, it's wonderful. Otherwise you feel superior. There's no superiority, no inferiority. You learn to respect of other faiths and they collaborate to overcome suffering by being less selfish, less egocentric. And this is where, if you use a Christian term, you can have God guiding you, the Holy Spirit guiding you, and we would call the Bodhisattva guiding you. I think in the 21st century, the egocentric man must become more humble.
The egocentric man must become more humble.
And we must also admit that we have been exploiting women all along. And by exploiting women, we exploit nature. I think we have to go back to learn the way of nature. And that nature, in fact, is Dhamma. And to concentrate on Dhamma. That means that we do something the way of the Dhamma. Or the Chinese would call the way of Tao. Is the way, you know. And I think with that, we can do things sublimely. We can do things holistically. We can do things less egocentricity. And I think that would be the right approach.
Good,
but this approach understands nature. But in this day and age, we have been alienated so much from nature, and we bring up society with hierarchical structural violence. We must understand that, and to overcome that non-violently.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. One aspect of what you're saying, it seems like that traditionally Buddhism is often taught, or at least in the Mahayana view, in the way, you know, it is designed to lift people out of suffering, and often that lifting out of suffering is to lift them beyond the samsaric world into a nirvanic realm, either beyond this world or a nirvanic realm within this context. And in that, I think Buddhism has not often been very politically oriented or politically motivated, or very involved in the social conditions of the society. And it sounds like you're really arguing that it must kind of sort of reject that old model and embrace the entirely kind of new.
Well, the old model has its usefulness, you know. We help the poor, so that they will ever remain poor, and hope for better rebirth. I think that is kind of escapism.
Right.
I think you must not help the poor. Learn from the poor. Share their suffering, and the poor will empower you, and you will empower them, non-violently. I think this is where, for me, my interpretation of the Bodhisattva way.
Okay, but you're saying even to get involved with the structures of why they're suffering, to why even in a social way, not just to say, okay, we must heal that suffering or to hope for a better life in the future, but really, how can we change this world here?
Yes, I think that's the essence.
Okay, and that's really beyond an escapist notion, like you're saying. It's beyond the which is often
yes,
traditional.
indeed.
Do you get criticized for saying that?
I will get criticized. I got put in jail and so on, but I think it's worth it. Worth it.
Well, good, very good. If you look at maybe not just the Buddhist tradition itself, but the religion in general, what would you see as what most needs to change about just the religious traditions? How can the religious traditions themselves together, what most needs to change, or what most needs to come out of the religious traditions to address the issues of the world?
Number one, don't think that your religion is the best. Your religion could be the best, could be the worst. When Marx said religion is opium the people, he's very mild.
He's very what?
Very mild. Religion could be much worse than opium. You can incite people to kill each other.
Right.
I think we have to be aware of that. Every religious tradition has its negative elements, which we try to ignore. Acknowledge our negative elements. But the positive element in every religious tradition is tremendous, because it deals with the mystery of life, it deals with transcendental. I think this has been ignored. I think we need that transcendental element. And this transcendental element is beyond any religion. You see, you can call it mindfulness, you can call it prayer, whatever it is. I think you become less and less selfish. You become more mindful, and you want to serve others. But to serve others, don't have delusion get hold of you. To serve others, it doesn't mean that to make people become a goody-goody or I'm all right Jack. To serve others means that we must confront suffering. And suffering now linked with transnational cooperation, linked with free markets, capitalism and so on. So we have to attack that, but not attack the capitalists, not attack those on top of the empire, but we must destructure the empire. We must destruct capitalism. I think this is where you need really wisdom. And this is where the Buddhists must learn from the Jewish tradition, must learn from the Christian tradition, Islamic tradition. I think this is where we should come together to be transcendental, to be spiritual. Otherwise, you know, this day and age is too mundane, it's too materialistic, too technocratic. It has its positive element, but it has much more negative element people are not aware of. So I think we have to go beyond that. I think this is, for me, that is the best in religion.
So, great. That's great. Would you say then, because one of the questions we're also exploring is can the religions save us, to put it in a dramatic terms, but can the religions meet the future, or do we need a new tradition entirely? So it sounds like you're saying that they can, but they must change.
Yes, because the new religion is very powerful now.
The what?
Consumerism is the new religion.
Consumerism is the new religion.
You see?
Right.
See? I think that's demonic religion. But to attack it is not possible unless we offer something alternative. Because people deep down don't want to be blindly following greed, hate, and delusion. But to preach to them, they won't listen. But to offer something skillfully, that is, they can empower themselves. They can really see something beyond the mundane.
Right.
I think people really, if they have, if they have opportunity, they would like to have something transcendental. They want to see the mystery of life. And I think this is where not only Buddhism, every religion, but don't try to tell people that only my way. The main thing is that since the Western world becomes superior, we want everything to be controlled by intellect. No, we should be guided by God. Although the Buddhists don't use that term, they use the Bodhisattva, the Holy Spirit. I think we become much more humble. And then in that sense, the path would be more non-violent. Deep down and listening to the people suffering. And when you listen to people suffering, you don't want any more violence. And with that, then I think we can change things